many of our, a lot of our members, yourself included, most likely, to be perfectly honest, Biden was not our #1 pick in the primaries, and we're behind him 100%, but appreciate just the concept of this, event, which is to really keep a check on how things are progressing in Washington. So I think that is really a worthwhile endeavor, and I appreciate all of you being on here. It really is our members who make our organization so strong, and appreciate you signing on today and being a part of what we're building. So yeah, I'm excited to listen in, and I'll toss it back over to you, Bruce.
Thank you very much, Candace. And as you witnessed while you were speaking, my progress is an ongoing development. I'm sorry that I started the recording in the middle, but as you were speaking, I realized we want to have what you say and what all of us say available for those who can't make it, and also for us as we review the proceedings and create a protocol of what we accomplished today. All right, my name is Bruce Murray, and I have just started as the chair of the Global Progressive Caucus 4 years after others founded and developed it with some pretty amazing achievements. Just when they were getting started, I started riding my bicycle in 2018, September, October to the beginning of November from Madison, Wisconsin to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I wanted to understand what had happened in some of those really key swing states in 2016 and get out the vote for progressive candidates to win back the House, which we accomplished in 2018. And in the meantime, as you know, we've accomplished much more in winning the White House and the Senate. That means that the candidates we elected were now urging to pass bold legislation to meet the challenges, and to do so on a scale that those challenges exist today. We're going to talk more about how we can accomplish that maybe in September and October of this year, and then moving ahead into 2022 and beyond. With no further ado, I turn the table over to Sue Alksness, who, thank you, Sue, is getting up at 6 a.m. in the morning to be on with us as the vice chair of our caucus.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Yeah, I'm not completely awake. I'm certainly a work in progress, not only this morning, but every day that I get up and try to figure out what I can do that day for a better world. That's not always my focus, of course. Sometimes I'm just grumpy, but I'm just so thrilled that you're all here, and I know the work that many of you are doing, and we're gonna get ourselves organized, more organized, freshly organized, and we've got some very important work to do. What we do really matters. We have a perspective. We know that that's different that we can share with our families and friends and others based on our experiences living overseas, and we can see what's possible from a progressive perspective. And I'm super excited to go into our next couple of our next election cycle with Bruce's leadership and service, and all of you too. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Sue. And the work we do, I think Sue and I know, and many of you, all of you also know, that in our DA network, we rely on volunteer assistance of people like Rebecca Krameris, who's also joined us to say just a few words about her role as a caucus liaison. Rebecca?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm the IT liaison for our caucus, and you won't be hearing from me very often explicitly, but I'll be behind the scenes helping out as required with emails and events and whatnot. And I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to be I'm really excited to help in this way. And time zone wise, also I'm transferring from Germany to South Korea in the process of right now, so in the Asia Pacific time zone as well. And yeah, just to introduce myself, and then you may not hear from me explicitly too often, but really excited to help out.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Now I'm going to try to share my screen and go to the agenda that we have.
Bruce, this is
Yeah.
Sue. I was wondering if maybe there might be somebody who's here today who might be willing to help with keeping an eye on the chat, maybe. Or would you like me to do that?
Let's ask first if Rebecca might be willing to do that.
Yeah, sure. I can pop in if there's something that you guys don't seem to be noticing that's requiring attention.
Thank you very much, Rebecca.
No problem.
All right. We're coming up on our survey questions, and we have them in 3 categories: dual track infrastructure legislation prospects, midterm election result prospects, and initiative interests for us in the coming months. And then we're going to go on to talk about what we've done since 2018. For this part, I'm going to stop sharing my screen again and go to the survey questions. I'm going to start with a group of 3 questions on the reconciliation budget package, which right now is front and center as the Senate and House come back from their recesses. I'm going to ask you to be pretty quick about this and answer these questions within 1 minute. What Medicare expansion elements will be included in the budget reconciliation package, which I'm creating an acronym for BRP or BURP. And here you have only one choice.
Is it just me? I can't actually answer the questions. Are other people having that situation, or is it just me? Maybe, because I'm a co-host, I see something different. Never mind.
So that is important. Sometimes I've been in that situation, and then I decide to do something, and I would ask you, don't do anything with the survey. Let me do that, please.
I will not do a thing. I'll just sit here quietly.
I have done so in the past, and it can create chaos. All right, we have that second question about the BRP and what it might include as far as human infrastructure is concerned. And then the third question, which has to do with climate mitigation and what might be included in the budget reconciliation package, which I think we're going to, in this coming week, hear more and more about what is in, what is out, what is being negotiated. All right, I'll give you 10 more seconds to whip up an answer, and we'll have a chance later to discuss it a little bit. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. All right, here is what we see for question number 1 about Medicare expansion. It looks as though the largest number believe that it could be both dental, vision, and there's hearing care, plus lowering the eligibility age to 60. And here with the human infrastructure. Looks as though some think maybe one or the other, but several think it could be all of the above, and some think maybe it will be none of the above. And finally, then we have, again, many selecting all of the above for the climate mitigation provisions. And it seems as though the eternal optimists may have won out in our first round. Let's take a look at the second round, midterm election prospects. And here we just have two questions. One, if the BERP passes with all of the above from that first survey, what would be the prospects for Democratic Party success in the midterms? Strong, mixed, or weak? And if that is not the case, if not everything is passed, what will the prospects be? This, I think, is something that we can do very quickly. Therefore, I'm going to say, let's try to answer in the next 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Last one. And for question number 1, it seems as though we're not certain. Several think that our prospects will be strong, and many also are saying it could be mixed. However, if we are not able to pass bold legislation for that dual track infrastructure package, and I would say soon, then it's more likely we're saying that our prospects of success in 2022 will be mixed or weak. Try to save that information up from these for discussion later. We'll go just to the third group, where we're asking everyone to consider what might be your primary interests, initiative interests for the coming months. We'd ask you to try to select 2: progressive candidate support, Medicare for all, Green New Deal, reasonable gun legislation, student debt relief, reproductive rights, voter rights, fight for 15 plus, midterm GOTV efforts, or other. And again, I'll ask you to be swift with this and try to respond within the next 30 seconds. Half of us have responded. All right, 10 more seconds. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, and here we go. You can see that we have such an agenda of initiatives, so many goals we would like to achieve. And I think this is very challenging when we say only 2. For many of us, we likely have an idea that we would like to accomplish all of this as quickly as possible. And I think as an active global progressive caucus, we can make solid progress on all of these. And that is what we're going to talk about for the remainder of our time together today. All right. What have we accomplished in our first 4 years? I'm going to turn it over to Sue, and if Kent is here, Kent Getzinger, one of our leaders from the beginning from Australia, please feel free to chime in. Bruce Kent and Gordon, and not Sue Kent and Gordon Gall from Japan is also here. Please feel free to, in the next 15 minutes, talk about all we've accomplished in the last 4 years. Sue, would you be willing to get started?
Yeah, sure. I'm managing like so many windows here. Hold on one sec.
In that very first category where we talk about midterm and 2020 election victories, it's important to note that we're using an example here, and it's certainly not limited to the names you see. If I were to start adding names, I would think about people like Mondaire Jones and people in the state of Illinois who have entered the House. And Sue, can you see that agenda window now?
Oh, I'm good, Bruce. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, so Kent and Gordon are on, and I think I'll jump in and just say you can see the list there, everybody. You know, the midterm in 2020 victories that many of our members were you know, helping with, working on campaigns, and although you know, and I think we could actually include the high level of interest and good results on Bernie's campaign, as well as lots of people getting behind the progressive messages of Liz Warren and other candidates was really great to see in 2020. And then of course, you know, the continued wins with the squad, and bringing in Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, and there's others. I'm sure folks have their favorite progressive candidates that either won or did well, you know, in recent elections. People can throw names into the chat if they want. And Kent or Gordon, would one of you like to talk about resolutions that have been supported in advance by members of the Progressive Caucus, or platform planks, or other activities? While they're getting
How about so
Oh.
actually, hi Sue.
Hey there.
Hello everyone, this is Gordon Gall. I am in Japan, Massachusetts voter, and a former co-leader of the Progressive Caucus. So yeah, let me chime in on some of the resolutions that we have pushed for. And just to give some context, we're talking about resolutions that we've advanced. This is talking about the resolution process through Democrats Abroad. And so by leading and supporting the development and passage of these resolutions within Democrats Abroad, we're able to have some influence on the kind of the messaging that's sent to the Democratic Party in terms of what is Democrats Abroad support. So you can actually see here on your screen resolutions including Green New Deal, Medicare for All, that passed with not just a strong majority, but a very strong majority. You can see the PRO Act here, that's in support of unions, and the Commission to Study Reparations, which I believe was also in cooperation with the Black Caucus. You can see the gun control measure and relieving tax burdens on Americans abroad, which was defeated, but something that we really put a lot of effort into when it comes to, pushing for wealth tax, et cetera. I think the point really to make here about these resolutions is that Democrats Abroad members like yourselves really stepped up with an issue or a cause that they really felt that they wanted to show that there was support for these measures, particularly within Democrats Abroad, and showing that as Democrats Abroad, these are these resolutions are measures that Americans living abroad strongly support. And so, one or two people through their efforts were really able to lead the development of these resolutions, and then push to have them heard by all of the leadership of Democrats abroad and voted upon, and have those move on to actually being represented in the DNC. So I think it's really important to not just show what these are, but to really emphasize that these are, issues that our members were very, very passionate about, and through their efforts, we were able to make that show that we had the numbers behind that. There were people who are really, looking to and willing to support these. And a lot of it is very hard fought and hard won. So there's also a lot of effort that goes into not just creating these, but also reaching out to leadership all across the globe to make sure that people know that these resolutions are being promoted, and getting people to understand what's going on.
Arden, I want to step in and thank you very much. I also want to let everyone know that Gordon had to alter his schedule a little bit this evening to be with us for a variety of reasons, including that he has a brand new son. And I want to thank you very much for stepping up and talking about our resolution work. And now ask Kent if he would be willing to talk a little bit about platform plank work. Kent, if you're there, please unmute yourself.
I'm looking to see.
Bruce, yeah, I don't see Kent on.
All right.
I don't think Kent has joined us.
And, let's then move on with the platform planks. We, in the last election cycle, joined DA in promoting kitchen table talks on platform topics. And there were those of us in various country committees, including in Austria, who organized kitchen table talks to try to generate interest around those issues that we consider most important. And they fed then into the platform work of the Democrats abroad.
I think Kent's just came in, if you still wanted.
All right. Kent, if you're there, would you like to say just a few words about our platform plank work?
Bruce,
Yeah,
Bruce.
absolutely. Apologies, everybody, for being late there. Yeah, no, certainly, Bruce would be happy to. Yeah, if you just sort of let me jump in. Apologies for being late, everybody. Have a daughter who is just settling a bit slowly tonight, as the multiple things that we do in Democrats Abroad and the multiple time zones we work across. So she was just settling a bit there. So sorry to miss my family here.
I just went through the kitchen table talks portion, and maybe you could pick it up talking about some of the actual planks that got into the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I might just, while you have everybody on, I might pull up, wrote a bit of a report about that and sort of say, we did a bit of a recap on that. Bruce, I'm just going to pull that up really quickly. As I'm doing that, this being, I think one thing about the Progressive Caucus, I have brought into as immediate past national chair of Australia, I just want to acknowledge that I am calling and joining you all from Ghana Aboriginal land here in Australia. It was land which was stolen and on which sovereignty was yet never ceded, and on which treaties have yet to begin negotiated. And I think that is just one thing that we have we did as a aspect of all of our meetings in Australia, but also I think in the Progressive Caucus, and just invoking what was native land that I'm calling from. Just want to acknowledge that first of all. So thank you for that. So I think that's very critical to do that. Yeah, I'd be happy to chat about some of the planks that were sort of included. Yeah, thanks for talking about the kitchen table talks. I suppose, I guess you described how this was a consensus approach, sort of in totality, and how this was set up, and just sort of just making sure I'm sort of starting from the same page as you, Bruce. Just sort of wanted to confirm that. Um,
Yes, and what I know is that the platform committee, which you were a member, was receiving a ton of input.
mm,
And then you, if you could just for 2 or 3 minutes talk about how you dealt with all of that input, and maybe even focusing on one of the planks and talking about then how you worked to the point where you had a committee platform plank that could be presented to the membership.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, first of all, sort of in the first part of that. So yeah, after the kitchen table talks, there was a sort of an initial platform was drafted by a few people, and then that was just put out to the entire membership for feedback, input, and feedback on that. And I believe that then that was put out, and then there were the platform committee members, 7 appointed, 6 elected. I was one of 6 globally, one of 2 in Asia Pacific. Then to take the sort of further feedback that was all accumulated. And this came in, obviously we're a big tent party, so we got, I think on each issue there was possibly, let's put it on one dimension, I suppose, a spectrum of, or it might not just be sort of on one dimension to think about that heuristically. It might sort of be different ways to approach a platformer or something else. So there could be, for example, let's take, so this was not only the kitchen table talks, but also previous resolutions that we had passed and considered in the past few years at our DPCA global meetings, but also those that were passed at the regional meetings leading up to it. I guess I'll highlight one, and I think this was, first of all, I think that this platform overall was the most progressive, I think, submitted to date. And I know that this consensus approach and this several month long process, which went through this, was very different to how it had been done before. Whereas, people would have sort of insert lines and sort of write it on the spot at the regional meetings. I'd have to get someone else to speak to that, because that's just what I've heard from previous members who are involved since before I was in 2017, as a leader in 2017. I guess I'll just highlight, I'll start with a couple planks that I worked on. So we also, when we formed the full platform committee of 13 members, we then to take all this feedback that was put into a Google form on a spreadsheet, and sort of we organized that, and how I approached in our platforms was just had to do that thematically. I worked on the the healthcare plank and the economic policy plank as well, because those are 2 interests that are very close to me, having been involved with the healthcare stories, having been involved with the Medicare for All resolution in, I believe that was 2019, I think. Yeah, 2019, we passed that. And so, and obviously, there was other issues that others were working on as well. But sort of take something like the Medicare for All, where there was obviously a lot of support for that. We passed that, we endorsed it as Democrats Abroad's official stance. But there were, some who didn't agree with that, for example. And, how, and it's one that's so expansive, and especially, with also the history that we did with the healthcare stories, that I know Gordon's on the call as well, as is Sue, how we got all these stories together. And I think many here submitted stories of different healthcare systems in different countries that are, very, very different in terms of, how they are fit into healthcare policy, what varying degree of public healthcare is, how is public healthcare considered? Is that sort of a primary, whereas sort of private healthcare sits on top of that, or is this some skewed sort of private/public with some amorphous boundary, something like, might highlight Singapore or something like that, where, it's sort of a private company, but there's like public money forced into it. So, but it's, there was sort of a lot of feedback, let's say, on this particular platform. And, we wanted to craft the language in a way that sort of juggled all of these things. For example, we passed this as a resolution, and I was the mover of that resolution, as was Sierra Bertram, then from the UK, and with the support of many on this call as well, Bruce, yourself, Sue, Gordon, and many others who had worked on this.
And I'm going to jump in again.
Yep.
I'm looking at our agenda a little bit, and we're going to have an opportunity to talk about not only our work on resolutions and platform planks, but then what we can do about them once they have been passed. And I would like to ask you to chime in again when we get to that, after talking a little bit more about what else we do. And that includes events and issue advocacy and other things. We were very active with the presidential primary reform. That Unity Reform Commission work was something that we focused on, also with partners in the United States who helped us watch live stream the DNC, the Rules and Bylaws Committee, undertake its work. And we also have been focusing, I think, fairly consistently on trying to understand what we can do to ensure that there's more transparency and inclusivity in our decision-making in Democrats abroad. We have more work to do on that. Then we have had election forums, and we are surveying the DA sometimes. We did a lot of work with other people, not by ourselves, together with other people, on coming up with healthcare stories. And we had some bittersweet November events after the primary season in 2019, 2020, where we were trying to negotiate how we wanted to work together with the Biden-Harris ticket. And we continue to have book club events, most recently Biden-Harris progress reports, and other events that encourage us to share information, develop policy positions, and decide what we want to do with those. I want to move on and just looking at the clock and talk then, and also ask for discussion about our strengths and weaknesses. One thing that I think we want to note is that among the caucuses and Democrats abroad, ours is one of the largest. And we have, as we just heard with people like Sue and Kent and Gordon and many others, a really solid core of volunteer work going on with people who have children and professional lives and so many other things going on, but still manage in ways that sometimes really impress me to do work like the work that Kent and Gordon and others did with that Green New Deal plank, for example, or working on Medicare for all. And so doing all of that, we've contributed to DA development. And I think that that is something that is really significant. It hasn't been a minor contribution. At the same time, I think it's important to acknowledge that we have weaknesses. What I've done here is just to create 3 bullet points for each category to open discussion. And with the large number of members we have, we still, as is the case everywhere with every organization, are looking for ways to engage our membership better. And then many of us look at some of the resolutions and platform planks we've passed and realize that just as is the case, can be the case with the Democratic Party platform, they sometimes seem to gather dust. And we have to continue working really hard to figure out how we can transform resolutions and platform planks into legislation and other action, policy action. And in addition to that, this is something that I want to discuss. We have a growing and more impressive Congressional Progressive Caucus in the United States. And I think we, in Democrats abroad, our Progressive Caucus, can contribute to the strength of that Congressional Progressive Caucus and to strengthen its resolve. We have a concrete example with dual track legislation that is going to be the topic for much of the remainder of September. It's the Congressional Progressive Caucus taking a strong position on making sure that the budget reconciliation package is as big and as bold as it possibly can be. And we, in Democrats abroad, can contribute to the strength and resolve of that position moving ahead. All right, I would like now to take a little time to stop sharing the screen. I'll come back to this and open the floor to discussion from your perspectives, what you think have been our strengths and weaknesses in proDA, whether you've been intimately involved or observing on the margins or whatever. And for this, I'd like to use the star hand up tool and ask Rebecca perhaps if she could keep an eye on the queue. Would anybody like to start the discussion, which we can now continue for the next 15 minutes or so? What are our proDA strengths and weaknesses? Sometimes we need a kind of icebreaker comment. Kent, would you be willing to climb back in and from your, oh, there you go. Kent,
Well, I think
of course.
we'll just looking at the queue. Jacob and then Caitlin had their hand up first. I just want to respect that queue. Yeah, I'd like to go first. Happy to, but just
Wait a minute, I missed that. Rebecca, who is first in
Yeah.
the queue?
Jacob, I believe that's you.
Hi, good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Jacob. I'm the Vice Chair of Democrats Abroad China, as well as the Chair of the Democrats Abroad Progressive Caucus here in China. I've been part of the Progressive Caucus now, I think since I signed up in 2018, and then became Chair of the Democrats Abroad Progressive Caucus in China in June of last year. And since assuming that role, I think one of the things that we could definitely work towards improving is creating greater connectivity between the progressive caucuses globally at the country and the global level. One of the things that I had trouble with as a newbie was actually finding how to connect with others in other countries and at the global level. To give one quick example, in Mobilize, where all Democrats Abroad leaders congregate, most of the caucuses will have their own individual channels where country caucus leaders talk with one another. But I noticed that DA Progressive Caucus doesn't have that. And so one thing that I'd be really excited about and willing to help with is to figure out how we can create better connectivity amongst us, both at the global and also the various country levels.
Jacob, thank you very much for that comment, and thanks also for being willing to talk with me as I'm just getting started and we're gathering suggestions from all over the world in this time when we're considering our own progress and what we can do moving forward. I think that's a very good suggestion. Rebecca, who's next?
Yeah. Thank you, Jacob. I think next in the queue is Caitlin.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just want to jump off of that on the topic of communication. So I'm here in Germany, and we recently relaunched our Progressive Caucus on May Day this year. I'm sitting here with Antar, he's the co-chair as well. But a big challenge that we have had is, well, two really communications related challenges. We cannot email our members specifically here, and we also can't start our own Facebook page for the Germany Progressive Caucus. So luckily I write the newsletters for Germany, but sometimes our events and stuff get lost in this massive email communication. It's been really great to be able to send things through Sue and now through you, Bruce, to have those distributed through the global chain, but it is kind of difficult to build these local connections here when we don't have that capability. So just in general, I'd be curious to hear from other country leaders about how you do that. And then secondly, also, I agree with the idea of really trying to strengthen our networks because I think it was Bruce earlier who said, yeah, we are one of the biggest caucuses. We have the numbers, and that should be reflected, I think, in DA leadership. And I don't necessarily see that reflected. And I think part of that is like if we get connected, if we are building each other up, then we will have that strength in numbers. And I think that will translate to the higher level as well. And so we really want to, build these connections, regional and also local.
Caitlin, thank you very much. And I know from reaching out and talking to many of you in the last 10 to 14 days that Jacob in China and Caitlin in Germany are really good at communications. And I want to really encourage you both to become a part of our communications team as during the next month to 2 months, we become active on the suggestions we're making right now to increase our connectivity, to review our use of social media, and to move forward in ways that help to connect us locally, on the country level, and globally. In the process too, I think our goal will be to learn what best practices there are out there and to share them from one country committee to the next and to integrate them into our global approach. Rebecca, is Kent the next in the queue?
I believe Kent put their hand down, so I think Steve, normally we do star and the words hand up, but I'm gonna assume that star in your case means hands up.
All right, Steve.
Yeah. Oh, hello. Yeah. Well, I guess I've heard some people speak about some things you've said, Bruce, and I guess I was just looking for some confirmation about what you said on the basis of just the Progressive Dems priorities, especially in our groups, whether it's the the DACN or the DA Germany or just the global level. Are we pushing the priorities, or are we going to allow like the people to talk about non-progressive candidates, like whether it's moderate or are they going to be, I mean, should they be talking about like things like medical, I mean, they don't support medical for all, or they don't support those types of things? Or should we be saying we're pushing these ideas as the progressive priorities that are listed on the websites? And then if not, then you need to maybe just hold your tongue, you know what I'm saying? You understand what I mean?
I hear what you're saying, Steve, I think, and I look for models for answers to questions like that. And one of them is in the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which has more than 100 members. And there is a striving for kind of unity within that caucus. At the same time, because it has more than 100 members, there's a variety of perspectives represented. And I think that the model I see there is trying to strive for unity, but at the same time accepting diversity in the process of striving for unity. That goes on also in Democrats Abroad as we strive now. I'm going to recommend to continue something that we have been doing, and that is reaching out to our other caucuses and looking for opportunities to collaborate, always with that 3P approach. That's my recommendation, to be principled, progressive, and polite, trying to push the envelope for the things that we consider most important.
I mean, can I just ask for clarification? I mean, if it is a progressive Democrat group, I mean, it's not just a Democrat group. So I'm just saying, should it be corralled in some way? Is there a way to corral that other than, being polite, progressive? I mean, if you got someone that's, even though it's not even like within our group, but they're on, let's say, Twitter, and they're attacking all the progressives, I guess I worry about that and that influencing the progressive data chats that happen.
Yes. My final comment on that for right now would be that we also work within the DA umbrella with Code of Ethics and also prohibition on bullying. And we'll continue to look to the DA charter, bylaws, and code of ethics for that sort of thing. But as progressives, as I say, I think we're going to strive for pushing the envelope for the things that we consider most important as inclusively as possible. Rebecca, who is the next person in the queue?
Sue, did you mean to put your hand up a little earlier on?
Oh, yeah. I'm just going to respond very briefly to. I love everyone's comments. They're super helpful. Really good to hear. Just to Caitlin's remark about not being able to email Progressive Caucus members in her country. In that case, it's Germany. And I just wanted to say that there's a session coming up in September for folks who are in leadership positions. They've been invited to talk about how country committees are structured, how chapters are structured, and share best practices and ideas. And it's just occurring to me that that forum might be a good place to advocate for the ability of caucuses at the country level to actually email their membership, because yeah, I think that's probably an important thing. And hopefully the folks in Germany will learn that other countries do allow their local caucuses to send emails to the members. Certainly in Canada, that's permitted. So that's all I just wanted to share. Keep the ideas coming, folks. Thanks.
All right, I see now that we have Elizabeth, Mike, Gordon, and Kent in the queue.
I think we skipped Jacob.
Oops.
I think Jacob is next, I believe.
All right, thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Caitlin, I wanted to respond to you with regards to your question about trying to organize communication in Germany. Just to give some insight with regards to how China operates, we do use a local communications tool here. And one of the ways that we've used to start having organization with that is that particular communication tool allows us to see very easily what state people are from, as well as which city they occupy within China. So that helps us with two things. Number one, so that we can collaborate with other people in DA on state voting issues, and then also to be able to know where people are locally so that we can meet up face to face. And then we're also exploring other potential tools like maybe Microsoft Teams or Slack, whatever direction DA Global goes into, so that we can connect at a global level as well. And then also a quick response to Steve with regards to creating definitions of some of the groups. I think that was one of the weaknesses that DA China had for the Progressive Caucus before, in that we did not really have such a clear identity. But recently, after speaking to Bruce, I think now we're able to move forward into having greater clarity by adopting a terms of reference that DA Global has, as well as their belief systems, and distributing that to our members. We're also going to be moving forward in some of our communication channels to kind of limit debate and to gear it more towards information sharing, education, and then also connecting in activist forms. So that's it for me. Thanks.
I'd like to chime in too and acknowledge everyone who has spoken so far, thanking you and letting you know that I'm taking notes and thinking about how what we're talking about can flow into the kind of progress report review and moving forward work. We're also going to propose reviewing our terms of reference. I'm recommending in the context of linking perhaps a little more closely with the Congressional Progressive Caucus of the Democratic Party. And that means that there's going to be an opportunity, I think, for all of us in the realm of communication and elsewhere to continue the question about how we want to interact with one another and achieve consensus and also action for moving forward. In the next half hour, I'm probably going to say push the envelope a half a dozen times. It's one of my current mantras. And I think that we have done that in Democrats Abroad, working together with really excellent people in caucuses and in leadership and everywhere, and that we can continue to do that moving forward. I'm going to say, I'd like it if we could wrap this section up in the next 4 or 5 minutes. Rebecca, how does the queue look now?
There's a few people left. Maybe we could encourage everyone to keep it brief. Next, I believe, is Elizabeth.
Thank you. And I apologize for any background noise. We are meeting at a local taco place. I've tried to remove myself from the music. So echoing Bruce's statements, inclusivity and unity are the very missions of DA and especially proDA. This group reflects the need and priorities of all of the other caucuses directly in many ways. So we need to be the most inclusive group. I would also like to reiterate and support Jacob Aldico's request that connectivity increase with the proDA global level and every other country committee. Bruce and all who help facilitate that proDA Facebook page, it's wonderful. Thank you. We love the emails. We hope that we can use our own email and the email page of, or the news page rather, of the website more often to promote proDA and other causes. As Jacob suggested, face-to-face makes country meetings much more friendly and productive. Thank you to all who have co-sponsored our events on your platforms, like our Talk About It Tuesday. You can see I'm wearing the sombrero, and I'm at one of the locations we hold those at. I've connected with others on and off of Mobilize, working on country comms, and that's on WhatsApp and also on Twitter. So let's keep that awareness out there and raise it. DA China uses the website to sponsor our events and proDA caucus events on the global level. So we recently supported this meeting, and we co-sponsored and published the recent book club event at the end of August. We also just unleashed a wiki page for all of our caucuses. Check it out. The page mentions each global caucus, and it shares our info for connecting globally as well as at the chapter level. It also displays chapter event info. So you'll see displays of old meetings and slides and things that we've done. Our hope is to work with Merrill, proDA, everyone globally, so that our chapter can have its own wiki page or blog using the wiki. So I suggest other country committees look into that. We're also starting to use Google Groups to create content, and this content is shared on social media to our members, who then hopefully will turn it into actions using whichever platform they may prefer. So I did post some of that in the chat box before. We're looking forward to hearing all of the best practices information and helping to keep each country level connected with global, and please continue to reach out for us. We're ready to get to work. Thank you, Bruce and Sue and Candace and everyone on this call. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I think we might have just 1 or 2 more people in the queue, and if that's possible, I'd like to cut it off there so that we can move on to the next moving forward component of our meeting. Rebecca,
Yes,
who's next?
So I believe we have 3. I'm going to assume that Sue, your comment is the one mentioned before based on the text. And next ought to be Gordon.
Okay, thanks a lot, Rebecca. I'll try to be brief, but I do want to touch upon some of the topics brought up so far. When it comes to the inability to email, and specifically contacting local kind of progressives, there's definitely a gap here, both in how different country committees are able to access their members. And I would definitely encourage the kind of Chinese model of looking at, of having a way to contact your members directly. It might not be specifically by email. And to be honest, email has not been effective. It's good to have the email in the box to then be able to tell someone in person, hey, please check your email box for the information. But to be honest, email hasn't always been the most effective way to activate people, to get them at an event. So I definitely would encourage to start creating a solution for that, be that with some kind of group or allowing people to sign on to a group that actually lets you message them when something is happening. And of course, if there is a way to link up global. I encourage that, but I wouldn't hold your breath for that ability. The next point is about, Steve was talking about kind of this toxic behavior online. I had leaders of DA tell me that they would kill me for XYZ reason. I'm not going to say any names, but when it comes to toxic behavior, I think one of the important things to think about, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, wherever, is where do you want to focus your energy? We have a fixed amount of energy. Do you want to push to make sure that a resolution gets through on Medicare for all, or do you want to argue with, Sam, Joe, Sally, or Bob online about, whatever name they want to call you or that kind of issue? So we all have a limited amount of energy, and you really have to decide whether you're going to focus on pushing together with people or fighting the internal battles that are happening online. So that's just this is my opinion. All of this is my opinion, of course. Regarding the terms of reference, and what does it mean to be a progressive? We do have a terms of reference, and I do think it needs brushing up. But if you look at that terms of reference, there's quite specific language in there that was developed, from the beginning. Very strong language on what our progressive priorities are. So I think it's for me, it's more about how do we put those into action? How do we revisit those topics and themes and actually make them live, as opposed to, do we need to recreate the language or define what a progressive is? I think it's quite issue based. And then I think when it comes to just roles, when it comes to roles within the caucus itself, I think it's really, even like in a meeting like this, who takes minutes, who's checking the queue, who's keeping time. Even in a meeting like this, there's a lot that everyone can do. And when we're able to, when we're all able to participate, I think that's when we can really start making a difference. So that was just kind of some thoughts that came up as I was listening to everyone talk. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Gordon.
All right, then next is Kent.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to wrap up on that latter point, and I completely agree with the last 2 points Gordon was making. I guess sort of the biggest thing that comes up for me in thinking about this and calling out toxic behavior, trying to move people into what an actual progressive is, because it's such a vacuous term in and of itself. I want to just philosophically sort of unpack that or leave it with that statement. This is about, it's the doing, as it's more than the sort of being, I suppose. It's more of a verb than a noun. And I think that, everything that was put into having originally worked with Sue, Gordon, and others on those terms of reference, I think there's some really great language in there. It does need brushing up. I think that can be strengthened and expanded. What are we trying to call people into? I can't just slap the label on me and say I'm progressive and then sit behind, other layers in a white male body and privilege and say, oh, I'm so progressive or something like that. It's actually trying to include people in that process. But also it is sticking to, not only a very specific outcomes that we want, Medicare for All, Green New Deal, many others, and so forth. But it is in that, I think it is the how we do it. How do we create what's called prefigurative democracy? How do we work in ways we want to enable our democratic process to be, in which we are actually genuinely included? And I think one big thing that we do want to address, and start maybe leading into the next bit, is just the issue of class. I think that is, if there's one massive issue I think that we should be really sort of anchored to, it is fundamentally that, and that's looking at all the other ways of oppression or sect with that, because I think that's really the biggest one. And I think that class privilege, even in Democrats abroad, is a massive unspoken thing. It is the proverbial, no pun intended, elephant in the room. So I think that's going to be a massive one. It's not to de-emphasize anything else, absolutely not, but I think that is one that has gotten, you want to emphasize with all the other amazing work we're doing and all the other caucuses too. So just want to leave it with those thoughts. Thanks all.
Thanks, Ken. Rebecca, I see that Candace has her hand up. You're looking at the chat more than I. Is it possible that we could close this segment with that?
Yeah, actually, Candace was already the next and last in the queue.
Great. Candace?
Sure. I'll promise I'll keep it short, Bruce. But I just wanted to say, first off, thank you for this feedback. And I know that there are certain hurdles right now that are built into some of our systems, particularly with communications, that we are trying to address. There are limitations, for example, on how many people can have access to the database per country. And the way this is structured does vary from country to country. So I just wanted to report back that the International XCOM this week, actually, we're sitting down and we're looking at we're calling it our digital entities agreement. So we're looking at just what platforms are we using? What platforms do we want to continue using? Are there other platforms? Just saying, what are we going to be using at the global level, and hopefully emulating that at the country and the caucus level. And also setting some framework for who has access to what, how is that granted, just so that there is some continuity in terms of, again, who has sending permissions, things like this. So I just wanted to let everyone know that that conversation is happening, and hearing your input today has been really helpful. So I will carry that back. And I have experienced this myself as a chapter chair in Germany at one point, where you couldn't send, and it is very frustrating when you can't get a hold of your people, so to say. I also wanted to just let everyone know we're redoing the website as well. So in the next 1 to 2 months, you can expect the Democrats Abroad website to look a little different, have some new content. Wanted to put that on everyone's radar. Bruce and Sue are going to be coming back to you for some asks on the landing page for the proDA webpage in its new form. And lastly, we're going to have some training series coming up this fall so that everyone is ready to go for 2022. This isn't specific to the Progressive Caucus necessarily, but that, again, across the board, everyone has the know-how to really do the work in 2022. So that's a little bit about what's happening from our side, and I hope that you'll be a part of that conversation too. And this ties into my very last point, which is, and again, Bruce, I'm not trying to steal people from you. proDA, of course, is the hub, right? But when we're talking about what we want Democrats Abroad to be, how we want to be engaged with Democrats Abroad, I hope that a lot of the conversation that happens here goes elsewhere within our organization. Kind of bouncing off of what Kent said, that this isn't a conversation that remains exclusive to proDA meetings, right? And that applies to all of our caucuses, but the ideas that are blossoming here are also taken elsewhere and acted upon elsewhere. So that's really my hope for the caucus, that you are engaged in other parts of our organization as well, and are representing the ideas that are really at the core of proDA.
Thank you very much, Candace. My takeaway is that proDA is reviewing, Democrats Abroad is reviewing, the Democratic Party in the United States is reviewing. And it seems like it's an ongoing process. And as we now also consider establishing working groups on communications, things like web presence, and also everything else. I'm going to share my screen again. It's going to be important for us as we do so to do it mindful of and interacting with Democrats Abroad, undergoing similar processes at the same time. All right. We really do want to build by engaging our membership and collaborating with all of the other amazing caucuses, task forces that are doing work that we want to help with. Now, I want to talk a little bit about our path forward. We want to think a little bit about our organization, which is entering, maybe we want to call it the next generation. And Sue and I want to solicit diverse and regionally representative steering committee members, keeping in mind all of the aspects of diversity that we think of in Democrats Abroad. And we are going to, at the end of this meeting, drop into the chat box form that we want to use in order to solicit those expressions of interest in becoming members of our steering committee. We want to begin now holding consistently routine monthly meetings of the steering committee. And in the first phase, we also want to take a look at our terms of reference, and in doing so, also understand and better what that document communicates, and the extent to which we want to keep it as it is, refine the language a little bit, and also think about that context, our link to the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and there what we stand for. I think much of what we find in our terms of reference is there, but we might also be able to learn a little bit from what the Congressional Progressive Caucus is doing. Then we want to establish working groups. There'll also be an invitation with a Google form to express interest in becoming a member of our working group on the terms of reference review, communications, issue advocacy, candidate support, events, and collaboration with other caucuses, task forces, councils, etc. And one of them, a new state teams group, is just taking off today, and they're working this afternoon on talking about how we might begin to think of ourselves also as working where we vote, thinking of various state teams. We also have the taxation task force. And now in our last 15 minutes, I'd like to invite various members and people who are on this call to talk a little bit about initiatives that we might perceive as key progressive initiatives moving forward for the rest of this year and into 2022 and beyond. And I'm going to now go down here to the PowerPoint page and ask Betsy Katora, who's in Finland, to talk a little bit about our proDA book club.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Bruce. Well, we've had quite a lot of fun since July 2020. We've done 13 books, one each month, and had very lively discussions. You can go on to the second slide, Bruce, yeah. And these are the ones we've had this year. And here we go on the slide number 3, please. Okay, so these are the books that we've chosen and the dates when we have the book club. It's usually the last Monday in the month. I forgot to put a time there. We start at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we go for an hour and a half. And in fact, in August, we were very lucky to have the actual author himself join the club for about 20 minutes. And also, Bruce has invited Professor Davies, who has authored the book Left of Karl Marx, The Political Life of Black Communist Claudia Jones. He's asked her if she would come and join us for a little bit. And it was wonderful in August. We had a great time. And we're hoping that this will happen also in September. But regardless of whether authors come or not, we have a very good time discussing. And if you go to the next slide, Bruce, great. Right, so we meet the last Monday, we have lively discussions, and our groups can be anywhere from 4 to 20 members. And it really varies depending upon the interest people have in the book. And also all DA members are very welcome, not just progressive DA people, but we do choose the books. And I want to also thank John Esteban Rodriguez, who's the co-chair of the book club, who couldn't be here today, but he's worked quite hard in the beginning of the book club and will join us in about a month's time, I hope. He's been very busy with his work. Anyways, we had a great time and I hope it continues, and please come and join us. You don't have to actually read the book. if you don't want to. Some people haven't. We would like you to, but anyways, we have a great time, and both Sue and Bruce have been very helpful in helping also to coordinate it. So thank you very much.
Betsy, thank you very much. I really enjoyed that last book club meeting too, where we had somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes to have an open discussion about labor law and also labor policies. And it seems as though no matter which book we choose, we'll all find links to current issues and current actions that we're considering. It's one of those places where we can also have lively, principled, progressive, and polite discourse. All right, we're going to share the screen again briefly. And go back to our agenda. And we also, since for the last 6 months, have been having monthly Biden-Harris progress reports focusing on those 4 big plans of the administration and continually sharpening our focus on infrastructure legislation, which will be the hot topic in September. We also have an ask out to a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus who we hope might agree to come and speak to us, even though it's such a busy time in the House of Representatives, about that infrastructure legislation. And what I mean to say by that is we intend to continue the progress reports, and perhaps also with some input from the House of Representatives. Also, in the most recent DPCA global annual meetings, there were 2 of them to handle a lot of resolutions and other work. There was a DA Resolution 3 that passed that focuses on considering a platform, DA platform for issue advocacy. And I hope that our Progressive Caucus can find a seat at that table to discuss how that issue advocacy platform might take shape. We also are engaging in Democrats abroad in an ongoing discussion of how we deal with foreign policy issues. If there is a more systematic discussion about that, I hope and I believe that the proDA members will want to play a solid role in that discussion. And we're going to continue with resolution and charter amendment work, always asking ourselves that question: how can we make resolutions, charter amendments, platform planks, not something that just gathers dust somewhere on a shelf, but is really a living, active part of our work as we continue pushing that envelope for progressive change. And also, we're going to be interacting with the Medicare Portability Task Force and Disability Caucus members, Marnie Delaney and Heather Stone. They'll be coming into our next meeting in the EMEA Americas meeting at 5 p.m. Central European time, talking a little bit more about their work and how that Medicare portability might become also a part of Medicare expansion as we move from one step to another until we have Medicare for all, period. And I'd like to ask Caitlin Kennedy in Germany to talk to us just for a minute or two about the DA Germany Progressive Caucus and your next meeting.
Hi, everyone. Starting my video again. Yes, thank you, Bruce. Again, I'm Caitlin. I'm sitting here with Antar. We're the co-chairs of the Germany Progressive Caucus that, as I said, was relaunched in May. Our next meeting is on September 19th. I'll send the link in the chat when I'm done, but I'm on my phone and I can't multitask on my phone like that. But our next meeting on September 19th at 10 a.m. Germany time, the Central European time, is going to be kind of a debriefing on what happened at the recent August global meeting. This is something that we've done in the Germany Progressive Caucus a couple of times since we relaunched, and just a bit of background on that. So Antar became a DPCA voting rep this past spring, and so we were at the spring global meeting, DPCA meeting, and that was really kind of, I would say, the first time that we were really exposed to the larger decision-making structures above the Germany level. And we found that very eye-opening for a number of reasons. Firstly, you know, we were shocked by how unrepresentative the process seemed. We were also, yeah, honestly surprised that the global leadership structures seemed to us, you know, as a whole, rather conservative as compared to regular DA membership overall. At the same time, we were also really impressed by the kinds of decisions that were being made. I mean, really important decisions being made on DA members' behalf, like these resolutions that we've been talking about and policy proposals that we've been talking about. And a lot of those decisions are things that people care about very, very deeply, but it didn't seem like the people making the decisions were really getting input from the membership. So yeah, that's something that we're trying to change. You know, we're new to this, we're learning as we go, but as we learn, we think we can all learn together and make this process feel more democratic, more representative. We want to talk about, you know, we want to do that by informing people of what's happening. We want to discuss together, and we also want to take action together to make this organization feel like it really represents us. And secondarily with that, you know, we talked a little bit about candidate development, not just, you know, candidates in Congress, but we want to develop progressive candidates here in DA. We want that global leadership body to represent us. And we've seen that incumbents have a huge advantage. We really want to start empowering people now, working together now, so that the next time votes come around, we can really, you know, have an impact and have a DPCA body that we feel represents us. So that's what we're trying to do with events like what we're doing on September 19th. It's just an informal kind of debriefing session, discussion session. It's at 10 a.m. here. I know that's not great for some other time zones, but if this is something that y'all want to do with your groups, we're really happy to discuss, to coordinate, and to make this something regular that Progressive Caucus groups do. So thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Caitlin and Antar, for your work on what proDA is doing in Germany. And now we're just going to move the screen over a little bit and ask Antar if he'd be willing to talk to us a little bit about his new work as with the Reparations Task Force.
Yes, thank you, Bruce, and thank you everybody who's shown up today. I want to just first off emphasize that there are lots of misgivings and misconceptions about reparative justice in America. And the concept of reparative justice being a Black identity issue or Black only issue. It is not that. This is at heart a progressive issue. It is essentially asking the US federal government to fulfill an obligation based on accountability. This failure to fulfill this obligation, that is reparations for not just slavery, but also Jim Crow and modern day structural racism, is hobbling American democracy. And it is also hobbling the cornerstone of the Democratic Party's vote stateside, Black Americans. At this moment in time, the failure to fulfill this obligation does a couple of things. First off, it calcifies modern day voter suppression. It calcifies the Black American vote as a static underclass. And it also curbs aspirational desires. Black Americans, despite what modern statistics show, are the most responsive to progressive policies, but they do not have, in low socioeconomic areas, the freedom, the legislative freedom to choose their most deepest desires. Instead, oftentimes, as we saw in South Carolina during the Democratic primaries, many people in low socioeconomic African American areas vote for incrementalism. This is the sum total result of not necessarily having the freedom that reparative justice can bring. Ample studies have shown that for the mechanism of structural racism, it's powered by a predation of a static underclass, and for a long time, we've been that underclass. Today, however, Americans, all Americans, and many poor white Americans are also starting to feel this bite. However, we can begin working today to try to address these disparities one by advocating for HR 40. So what I would like to do is now just briefly describe HR 40. HR 40 is a reparations study bill that will detail and examine the specific parameters of structural racism historically and currently today, and also try to create recommendations on addressing these disparities. This is, in my opinion, one of the top progressive pieces of legislation that nobody really knows about and nobody really talks about. And I think that by having a progressive push for HR 40, we can, in essence, create a charm effect. This does not have to be a Black only issue. This is a progressive issue, and we can pull together many, many Black Americans just by the strength of our advocacy from all Americans. And we can reanimate the Black American political left in a way we haven't seen in 6 generations. So what I would like is, I would like anybody who would like to jump on board this train to, transformative action and transformative justice in America, to email me something about themselves at reparations@democratsabroad.org. I'll put it in the chat box. And if you're interested, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, we want to bring you on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kantar. And we're closing in on the final 3 minutes of our time together this afternoon, evening, and morning for Sue Altsness back there in Toronto. I'm not going to talk too much about the DA Environmental Climate Crisis Council formation, but say in just 1/2 hour from now, Dash Nesbitt, who is leading the climate crisis group in Germany, is hosting this event. You can still sign up if you haven't for that. It's starting in a 1/2 hour, focusing on the documentary Kiss the Ground and regenerative agriculture in the United States, and the amazing contribution it could make to reducing our CO2 in the air by taking it back out of the air, and also not letting as much of it get into the air. And that's part of a council formation process that is also mirroring the DNC Environmental and Climate Crisis Council, which has taken shape within roughly the last year and is doing amazing work. I would like now to ask Sue Altsness if she could climb back on and talk to us a little bit more about the final collaboration opportunities that are front and center in Democrats Abroad right now. And also if it is possible for us to drop the links for the Google form expressing interest in becoming a member of one of our working groups or becoming a member of the steering committee. We've been working on the Google form very recently, and we're going to try to communicate it to everyone right now and also disseminate it in other proDA media during the coming couple of days. Sue?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so basically what we've done on the Google form is we've come up with what we thought made sense as working groups, folks to look at the terms of reference and see what kind of refresh might be recommended, folks who want to work on communications in all its form. That could include graphic design, social media, helping to get out the newsletter. Rebecca obviously is part of that crew already doing our IT work, and I know we can, if there's others with that ability, can backstop Rebecca as well in the same area. Issue advocacy is an area that we thought people would take an interest in, and we need to, we'd like to see some activity happening in candidate support, researching folks, and helping with putting on events. And of course, we're looking for folks on the steering committee. There's also there's lots of things happening across DA, and this is just a small, a few suggestions of where there might be opportunities for proDA members and folks with a progressive perspective, although we're open around what that is. proDA explicitly does not say you have to be this, or this to participate in proDA. We're open around how we define progressive, and we respect everyone's right to define that for themselves, as uncomfortable as that sometimes can be. So there are the state teams that are forming, and I can put a link in the chat for something that's coming up, but there's opportunities to help start a new state team or join an existing state team. This can be important if there's issues around how primaries are conducted in those states, or other things that sometimes relate to concerns about access for progressive issues and progressive voters. And the taxation task force, there's quite a few members there who see an issue between the wealth tax and DA's taxation position on residence-based taxation. And so it'd be great to have some more progressive voices engaging with the taxation task force. We know that there are low-income Americans abroad who appreciate the COVID relief. If we have residence-based taxation, that won't be coming through. So there's perhaps some hard conversations and thinking that need to happen around residence-based taxation. So I think those are the things I was going to mention. Bruce, is that what you wanted me to say?
Yes, thank you very much. And I want to close by saying that, remember that survey question we had about interests, initiatives for the coming months? What are your top two? As far as our working groups are concerned, we would like it if we would get 17 responses with each one of you indicating that you are willing to step up for one working group. And we're going to take that information then and plot a course forward with also in our developing steering committee, so that we constitute the working groups, meet regularly, and achieve action results, so that when we look back at the end of this year, we will say, holy cow, or whatever. We did this at the beginning of September, and have made really, really solid progress, pushing the envelope by the end of the year. Mike Nitz also chimed in with a request to add one final idea for collaboration. Mike, would you like to take the floor?
Yeah, just if that's okay. I really love everything that everybody's been talking about. This is the first time I've had an opportunity to come to something proDA. I haven't been around for very long at this point, so I'm excited to come and hear what everybody's saying. I also there's another particular area that I would really love to see us talk about, and I don't know if we've ever really tackled immigration as a whole in the past. Like I said, I haven't been around for a terribly long period of time, but it really seems to me like there's a hunger on a national level in America to really rewrite our immigration laws from the ground up, and ICE abolition, and a lot of repatriating veterans who have been deported for nonviolent crimes, and just a whole lot of nonsensical things going on in that area. And so I would really invite everybody who's here, if they want to talk about these issues. AAPI, Hispanic, VMF, and Veteran Deportation Committee are going to be potentially putting on another event for the immigration series that we started in August. And it would be really wonderful to have some representation from the Progressive Caucus as well, and some voices and stories from this group. I think that a lot could be added. And then on the states groups, I think that it's a really great way for us to all kind of get involved with each other and get involved back home. And when we first started talking about the states groups, I really started looking into North Carolina in 2022. I'm a North Carolina voter, and 2022 might be one of the most important midterms that we've had, because right now the state Supreme Court that has forced the legislature to redraw our districts pretty much every election for the last 10 years for racial segregation throughout the districts. They were making districts that were like 80-90% minority and packing them all into a single district by using highways. It was pretty gross. And the state Supreme Court was majority Democrat and was like kicking those back to the legislature over and over, until finally we got maps that didn't go 10-3, even though the vote went 50-50. But two of those Democrats are up for re-election in 2022. And if we lost both of those, then the Republican Party would have a 5-2 majority on the state Supreme Court. And
Mike, I'm going to jump in there and say,
Yeah.
I think that you're making a really excellent point. And what I think
Sorry.
we're understanding is our plate is pretty full, and we have to be thinking also about the best possible division of labor for us as progressives. And sometimes it might be possible to link things. And we just articulated our interest in a working group on candidate support. It seems to me that also can be in part state oriented, so that Mike, for example, might be focusing on progressive candidate support in the state of North Carolina. And we may then try to reunite, coming up with a nationwide list of candidates we think we want to support, with input from people in various state teams. The same thing can be true with issues. And in the end, it's going to be a matter of us deciding where we want to put our focus in our progressive caucus, how we can link that to other groups in a collaborating way as we go about, this is my last time for this meeting, pushing the envelope for progressive change in a principled and a polite way. That's as many P's as I can think of as one sentence, except to say, please consider joining our steering committee and our working groups and working with us as we move forward. Sue, were you able to put the Google form into the chat box?
Yes, I put the Google form into the chat box. I requested any suggestions people might have to improve the form. Doing our best to make that accessible and clear and easy. And I just dropped it in again, so it's right at the bottom of the chat, and easy for folks to find.
And we're going to seek permission to disseminate that within Democrats Abroad IT community within the next couple of days as best we can, with a desire to get feedback quickly. If some of you, as I am going to do, are going to jump off now, we're going to close this meeting and maybe go to the DA Germany meeting on Kiss the Ground or somewhere else. Please take a look at that form and take action on it within the next few hours if you can. And we'll be back in touch. There's another meeting with about 40 of us taking place in just about 3 hours, and we're going to get prepared for that meeting too. Thank you to everyone who participated, and have a good rest of your day and a great new week.
Thanks, everybody. Feel free to unmute and say goodbye or final
Thanks.
remarks.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, Bruce.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
See you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks, everybody.